Okay, so we'll continue with the investigations of benign prostatic hyperplasia. Yesterday we discussed about certain other diagnostic evaluations, and we have also learned about cystometric studies. So now I'll just give a detailed view of what is cystometric studies. Yesterday we already saw what is cystometrogram, how we do it. So how is it done? I already told you that if these studies are not being carried out using proper aseptic techniques, what happens is there is chances of urinary tract infection. You will induce infection to your client. So the process is like, first you have to clean the skin around your urethra and give local anesthesia. Sorry, not yours, your clients. Okay, so same like as you do for perineal care when a patient is catheterized. So you have to clean the skin around the urethral meatus, the external urethral meatus, and then you have to insert a catheter into the bladder of the patient. So why we are catheterizing? You already know that the patient is not able to void fully. He will still have the feeling that urine is being retained inside the bladder. So by inserting a catheter, we can measure the amount of urine that is present inside the bladder. Then we will insert another catheter into the rectum, and electrodes are placed in the surrounding areas of the rectum. The tube attached to the catheter is called as cystometer, that measures the pressure inside the bladder. The doctor, after catheterizing the patient, what the doctor will do, he will fill the bladder with a saline solution and water. So we already saw yesterday that we will first ask the patient to void into a vessel. We will measure the amount of urine that is present in that, and obviously if the patient is having benign prostatic hyperplasia, the prostate is enlarged, urethra is compressed, the bladder won't be emptied totally. So after that you will insert a catheter into the bladder. Along with that you will insert a catheter into the rectum too, because we know the position of the prostate gland. It has a we saw as the posterior view as well as the anterior view yesterday. Okay, so after catheterizing the patient, what the physician will do, the physician will fill the bladder with saline solution and water, and there will be a series of questions that is asked to the client during this period. As you are instilling saline to the bladder, obviously the patient will feel the urge to micturate. Although already as there is retained urine inside the bladder, the patient may have the feeling of fullness or pressure inside the bladder. He may also experience pain, and as the bladder is full again with saline and urine, what happens, he will have the urge to urinate too. Okay, so these questions will be asked to the patient during the procedure. Okay, so these are the sensations that the patient may feel, that is the sensation of coolness or warmth due to the liquid that is being instilled into, and there is possible leakage during the procedure, and that is normal. Leakage means dribbling of urine from the bladder through the urethral meatus. And when your bladder is getting filled with the saline that is been instilled, the doctor will ask the patient to report to the doctor when the patient begins to feel an urge to urinate. So if the bladder there is a limit till which we don't feel us micturating. You all know, you might have learned in your anatomy and physiology the GFR rate. So our kidney is continuously functioning and the urine is being excreted to the bladder continuously, but we are not having the feeling to micturate every time. Even when the single drop of urine reaches our bladder, there is a certain limit capacity of the bladder. When that is overrun, then we feel like we have to excrete the urine, otherwise my bladder is going to rupture. So the doctor will keep asking that to tell or to report to him when you feel the urge to urinate. After the bladder is full, then the physician will allow you to urinate, and the doctor will record the pressure of your urine stream. So initially we said that a catheter is inserted into the bladder. This is to drain away the remaining amount of urine that is present inside your bladder after your first micturition attempt, so that your bladder will be empty. Then we will instill saline, and after that the doctor will ask the patient, when you feel the urge to urinate, then you will be allowed to urinate, and the doctor will record the pressure of the urine stream. That is, if as the example yesterday I told you, if the hose is clogged or if there is an obstruction to the flow, what happens, the stream of water coming out will be weak, or there will be dribbling of urine. So the doctor will check for the strength of the pressure of the urine stream that is coming out when you void. They will then drain any fluid still in the bladder and remove the catheter. So after that again, if the doctor will check if the bladder there is retained urine inside the bladder again, and then what, if there is any retained urine, it will be drained after again by catheterizing, and then the catheters will be removed, both the rectal as well as the bladder. Why a rectal catheter? Because when the bladder is getting filled, and there will be pressure to the posterior part, that is to the rectum. So that is why you are instilling a catheter to the posterior part of the rectum too. So this procedure lasts for about 20 to 30 minutes to complete, and it is entirely complication free usually. So now I'll show you a video.
You are about to undergo a urodynamic study to investigate the function of your bladder. These tests will help evaluate the organs that store and pass urine, such as the bladder, urethra, and tissue that connects them. Some of the tests include uroflowmetry and cystometry. Uroflowmetry is used to measure the rate of urine flow during urination. Cystometry is used to check whether the bladder is emptying and filling properly. This animation shows how a typical urodynamic study is performed. Your doctor might begin with uroflowmetry. You will be asked to urinate on a special toilet in private. This toilet will measure the flow of your urine. Afterwards, an ultrasound of your bladder is made to see how well it emptied. If you have to undergo cystometry as well, a catheter will be inserted into your urethra after receiving a local anesthetic. Then one more catheter is placed in your rectum. Both catheters measure the pressure in your bladder and your abdomen. Sensors on your abdomen monitor the activity of the pelvic muscles. Your doctor will fill your bladder with sterilized fluid using the catheter. You will be asked to cough or bear down to test your bladder reaction. Your doctor will check if there is any urine leakage and if you feel the need to urinate. When your bladder is full, you will be asked to urinate while the pressure is being measured. The catheters and sensors will be removed at the end of the cystometry test. After the tests are done, your doctor will discuss the results with you and any further treatment you may need.
Okay, so I guess it was the diagnostic evaluations, main diagnostic evaluation for BPH in a nutshell. I hope it was useful for you. So we have covered almost all the diagnostic evaluations that can be done for benign prostatic hyperplasia. So next is it a harmful condition? Does it needs to be treated? As I already told you that benign prostatic hyperplasia, it is a general condition that occurs in almost 50% of the males as they grow older. Same like how your hair gets gray in color. So BPH needs to be treated only if the symptoms are severe enough to bother the patient and affect the quality of life. That is, your prostate gland has grown to such an extent that you are not at all able to pass urine properly. You are currently getting urinary tract infection. You have symptoms like abdominal pain, fever, fatigue due to urinary tract infection, hematuria, which will affect the quality of your day-to-day life. Then it needs to be treated. If you have renal insufficiency, that is, your performance of the kidney will be affected later on after a period when you are not able to urinate properly. So this also I have mentioned. If you have frequent urinary tract infections, you should go and consult a physician and later on a urologist for treatment. Let us see the management part of benign prostatic hyperplasia. We will discuss about the medical management, surgical management and nursing management as well. So in medical management, the treatment depends on the cause, the severity of obstruction and the condition of your patient. So if it is, we will check the cause, why has it happened. If the patient was on any hormonal treatment, is it familial, is he having any comorbidities like diabetes, hypertension, where he was taking beta blockers. So we have to check the cause first. Then severity of obstruction. So the obstruction severity increases as the size of the prostate gland increases, and the present condition of your patient. If your patient is well enough to tolerate the treatment, and as I have already told you, there is a diagnostic evaluation called as prostate specific antigen test. So it will rule out if the patient is having a benign tumor or is it a malignant one. So when do we undergo that diagnostic evaluation? When your patient has at least a 10-year life expectancy more. So depending on the condition of the patient also, we check for the medical management what is available. So let us see some of the treatment modalities that are available. First is immediate catheterization if the patient cannot void at all. So you have to first consult the urologist if an ordinary catheter cannot be inserted. Why? Because we already saw that this is the prostate gland, this is your bladder, and sometimes it will be develop too much that the catheter cannot be advanced into the bladder after this obstruction. So in such cases, what is done? They will do a suprapubic catheter insertion, because you cannot insert the indwelling catheter through the normal urethral route. And then watchful waiting to monitor the disease progression. So once the patient is relieved of the symptoms and you have started on with the management, watchful waiting is being needed to see whether the disease is being progressing to the worse side or the symptoms is being relieved. So let us see about some of the drugs that are given for benign prostatic hyperplasia. First group of drugs are called as alpha blockers. Why we are giving alpha blockers is, the action is they relax the bladder neck muscles and muscle fibers in the prostate, making urination easier. See, this is the prostate gland, it is all compressing, and on the top when you are having the urge to urinate and you are putting pressure more on the bladder, it will increase the symptoms of your abdominal pain and as well as the other lower urinary tract symptoms. So what does the alpha blockers help in? They help to relax the neck of the bladder, muscles in the neck of the bladder, as well as the muscle fibers in the prostate. So once this muscle fibers of the prostate and the bladder neck muscles relaxes, it will allow the smooth passage of urine. that doesn't means that it will treat the enlarged prostate gland. The size of the prostate will remain the same, but the pressure that the patient experienced during micturition will be less due to alpha blockers. Example of the drugs are given here, you can go through. The next group of drug that can be used to relieve the symptoms of benign prostatic hyperplasia is 5-alpha reductase inhibitors. When alpha blockers treats the symptom of difficulty in passing urine, here the alpha reductase inhibitor shrink the prostate by preventing hormonal changes that causes prostate growth. So this inhibits the action of the hormones that increases the size of the prostate gland day by day. So once this drug starts, it causes shrinking of the prostate gland. Why the patient experiences the symptoms? Because the prostate is being enlarged. So once the prostate is shrink, the problem is solved. And these are the drugs that comes under this 5-alpha reductase inhibitors, and the patient may need to continue the drugs up to 6 months to get an effective management outcome. Next is combination drug therapy. So sometimes the doctor may ask you to take a combined drug, like including the alpha blockers and 5-alpha reductase inhibitors. So if you are taking it alone, if your symptoms are not being relieved, then the doctor may advise you to take both, so that the pressure on the muscles will also be relieved, and by time being that we already saw that it takes almost 6 months of continuous intake of this medicine for proper shrinkage of the prostate. So these combination of the drug may help to reduce the symptoms. Next category of drug is tadalafil. So as per the researchers, it is used to treat erectile dysfunction. It can also treat prostate enlargement, but this is not used routinely. Next is surgical management. So in medical management, we saw what are the pharmacological treatments available, or the medications that are available to treat benign prostatic hyperplasia. Next is surgical management. For surgeries, there are mainly 2 types of surgeries which can be done. One is minimally invasive therapy, and the next one is invasive therapies.